these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ever since a group of revolutionaries mailed those words off to the King of England, this country has been obsessed with them. We quote them, we cite them, we use them as a moral compass. We have struggled for over 200 years to make these words match up with what is really going on. From a little skirmish I like to call the Civil War to Oprah Winfrey, we've been taking little steps closer. Are we there yet? No. Will we ever be? Maybe. I'd like to think so. But we will never get there if we aren't constantly thinking of ways to take the next step. Right now, this country is convinced that affirmative action, a program older than many of your parents, will work just as well as it did 40 years ago. It is like watching someone try to stuff a floppy disk into a CD drive. Race-based affirmative action in higher education is ineffective, outdated, and immoral. We should prevent race-based admissions and instead focus on achieving racial equality through community and school-based programs. Historically, affirmative action is defined as any program in employment or college admissions designed to remedy past discrimination. The term was first used by President Kennedy in 1961 when he created the Equal Employment Opportunity Committee, just a few years before Martin Luther King let slip the words, "I have a dream." Only 15 years later, in 1970, a white student sued the University of California because its medical school had 16 places set aside only for minorities. He wanted in. In the Supreme Court case that eventually followed, Justice Powell decided a split decision, and affirmative action for the basis of diversity was given the okay. In the 1990s, California heated up the affirmative action debate by passing Proposition 209, which instituted race-blind admission policies in colleges. More recently, in 2003, another Supreme Court case arose in which the University of Michigan was accused of using an unconstitutional admission system, where a point system allots more points for being a minority than having a perfect SAT score. The Supreme Court ruled no to the system, which too closely resembled the quota system outlawed in the previous case. However, they ruled yes to maintaining the general affirmative action program. Today, affirmative action continues to be the most muddled, sensitive, and debated topics in the United States. The main reason for all this confusion is that nobody seems to know what exactly affirmative action is for. Originally, it was designed to remedy discrimination in college admissions, but now it's implemented because colleges are trying to attract minorities. It was set up to promote equality, but equality is something each generation has to define for itself. Despite the good intentions of mostly everyone involved, affirmative action has the tendency, like all things, to corrupt and become immoral. Ideally, colleges would use affirmative action to use as a tiebreaker between two almost equally qualified candidates, but there is no effective way to regulate this. Instead, colleges end up lowering their standards for the sake of a more diverse campus. An author of a book supporting affirmative action even acknowledges that low black enrollments at elite universities that affirmative action seeks to remedy are produced by continuing disparities in pre-collegiate achievements in black and white students. It's understandable that colleges want to create a diverse, multicultural learning environment and to be able to list diversity in their mission statement like every other college. They want to be included in those lists that websites like College Board, College Prowler, and Princeton Review post that rank colleges by diversity. But what exactly is this diversity that people are looking for? Should there be the same proportions of minorities on campus as in the country? What if some minorities simply don't have enough qualified applicants? I mean, are you just supposed to admit them anyway? And why are we back to classifying by race? Back to assuming that all black and all Hispanics and all Asians have the same backgrounds and views. Sure, they also use the same techniques for gifted athletes, out-of-state students, and students from different economic backgrounds. However, being awesome at tennis cannot be treated as being part of a minority that was once viewed as an inferior species. By using race as a tool to increase diversity, it is implied that all people of one race have the same experiences, the very notion that affirmative action once sought to deny. Affirmative action is a form of discrimination. As Justice Powell puts it, preferring members of any one group for no other reason than race or ethnic origin is discrimination. This, the Constitution forbids. And through all this muddled logic, affirmative action does not actually benefit the people it seeks to help. It is designed to give disadvantaged minorities a chance to get into colleges. But while universities pat themselves on the back when they see minority numbers rise, the people they think they're helping, for the most part, remain in poverty. Studies have shown that although there is only one category called African American on applications, there is a gap between lighter-skinned and darker-skinned blacks that is almost as wide as the gap between whites and black themselves. African American run magazine Ebony states, in 2006, the University of Georgia found that, all other things being equal, light-skinned people were more likely to get hired for jobs over black-skinned people. Race and discrimination is a lot more complex than most admission officers are willing to take into account. It is never, ever, a simple question of black or white. Meanwhile, economic gaps persist within minority groups. And because of this, although affirmative action actually benefits middle-class minorities, there are still vast amounts of ignored problems among lower classes, with many students who don't have a chance of entering a competitive college in the first place. Stephen Carter of the New York Times cites, 1 in 3 black students fails to finish high school, and nearly all who don't are poor. These statistics aren't surprising, considering these kids go to schools filled with poor teachers, bad equipment, and an oppressive environment. Newsweek states, research shows that kids who have 2, 3, 4 strong teachers in a row will eventually excel, while kids who have even 2 weak teachers will never recover. When people think of helping minorities, they don't consider the fact that the ones with the most problems aren't even applying to colleges today. The reason affirmative action is so convoluted and ineffective is because it was never actually meant to be used like it is today. The original intent of affirmative action was to, as Raymond D'Angelo puts it, use the power of the executive branch and the federal government to monitor and intervene, if necessary, in cases of blatant racial inequality and discriminatory processes. Does this sound like anything like is going on today? Colleges are not turning away minorities, they are fighting for their right to keep recruiting them. I am by no means saying that we have reached equality, that we should live in a colorblind society, but universities are now using affirmative action to increase the amount of minorities in their colleges. They want a college that is properly rich and diverse, but are unable to reach this goal because there are no rules on how many minorities should be at a certain college. The concept was created in a time where there was less than half the amount of minorities in higher education than now. A large portion of the minority was blatantly and publicly racist, both in colleges and in the real world. As for using affirmative action to remedy discrimination that took place years and years ago, that kind of thing has been tried before. After the Civil War was over and thousands of freed slaves found themselves displaced and hated by everyone, the government attempted to remedy the situation by granting each black man 40 acres of land and a mule. That attempt was a total failure. There was no land for the government to grant. It all belonged to ex-slave owners who didn't want to give away anything. The same thing applies to affirmative action. If we treat it as a way to fix one of the country's greatest problems, racism, it will fail. Whether or not it's the right thing to do for whites to give back what they gained through white advantage, or whether white advantage exists at all, it will never happen. As a democracy, the government does not have the right, and should not have the right, to give away what belongs to every citizen, whether it is 40 acres or a place in college, to a certain group of people. What we should do instead is focus on the real issue at hand, why there are gaps in qualifications in the first place. We, as a country, need to directly address problems within minority communities that are keeping some adolescents from achieving. Education reforms, community programs, support not just within the communities, but outside of them. If each of us makes fixing the gap a priority and makes our voice heard, we can change things. You can start with yourself. Many of you in this classroom will be applying to college in the next few years. So will I. To go where we want to, we will have to lay everything down. Who we are, what we've done, where we want to go, and why we want to go there. If affirmative action is still allowed, you will also be asked to check off a little box that tells the college what color your skin is. That box is more important to colleges than those late nights spent on homework, those afternoons in the gym, on the playing field, in the dance studio, at a job. I ask you to leave that blank. Let your achievements and your experiences be what gets you into your dream colleges, not the amount of melanin in your skin. This country will get nowhere if we are always bogged down by how we think we should be doing things. By taking affirmative action, we are not saying that we have reached any golden ideals of equality. We are saying that we have moved on, that we are adapting to what this country needs, not what we wanted to have. Affirmative action is a floppy disk, an archaic,